Rise of the sun in the morning light, drums in the distance take flight, heartbeats echo through the trees, dancing shadows in the breeze. Feel the pulse of the ancient land, footprints mark the gold.
Just welcoming everybody else. People are there. Let me just pause the music a little bit. Yes, I've paused the music a little bit, and yes, so we're gonna be starting in a minute. So for people joining us, welcome everybody. And then if you still have camera, that's fine, except the speakers. The speaker, they know who they are, they know themselves, so that's absolutely fine. And I think we're gonna have as well Professor Bloomer, who's actually joining just right now. Excellent. Just gonna allow him to speak. Professor Bloomer, we can hear you. Can you hear us well?
Now, why am I not getting sound? I am.
Okay, while Professor Bloomer is getting things sorted,
That's probably it. Go to your.
did we manage to get Davison by any chance?
Yeah.
Yes, he said he was calling in.
Okay,
Yeah, one
so
sec.
let me see if I can see him. No, I don't see him just yet. I don't see him just yet, but if you can see him, just let me know. So yeah, so what we're gonna do, because I know that Professor Bloomer, can you hear me? It looks like we can
There we
hear him,
go.
but I'm not. Can you hear me, Professor Bloomer?
Yes.
Ah, excellent, excellent, terrific. Okay, that's fine. So I know we are all excited to have a very good conversation today, but time is also short. So if I let you maybe do a very quick intro from your side, and then we can take over and we can introduce the speaker and take it from there.
Really briefly, our moderator today is Tony Tiju, and he's from recycling in Africa, and he's going to be leading a panel or moderating a panel on battery manufacturing development in Africa. So Tony, take it away.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Professor Bloomer. So you can all hear me, right? So if you do thumbs up so that I know that everybody's good. Yeah. So hopefully you're not shy, because we are broadcasting you and also on LinkedIn and YouTube as well, Facebook. So don't be surprised if you can't speak, because it's just a speaker. Obviously, we can have the word here. So I'm very much delighted to have everybody here. So welcome to day 3 of this Morehouse Africa Awareness Week 2025. Started on Monday, and this year we're celebrating a milestone. I think all of you involved in this conversation, you will know. So it's 30 years of existence. That's something that we shouldn't be shy of celebrating. And the session we're going to have today, like Professor Bloomer say, it's a sustainable solution for Africa battery manufacturing industry, right? Very interesting topic. And this session, which is going to be run as a fireside chat, it's very critical because what we're going to be doing is exploring how sustainable battery manufacturing can really power, Africa industrial growth, while at the same time protecting our environment. And what we're going to do today, so with the speaker that we have, so we're going to be looking at the challenges, the innovation, but also the investment opportunity that are shaping this dynamic world. And I think, and I'm very privileged, that's really hard. I see myself, to have distinguished panelists. So I have, in a minute, Davison Chikazunga, who's joining us from the University of Johannesburg. I have Marquise Bryan from Fight for Light, and Franklin Amu, who's from Bailey's Emerging Markets, and Tunde Olatunji. And I think as I speak to you, I just have Davison just joining just in a minute, which is just timely. That's excellent. So I'm just going to ask, let me just make sure that I can allow Davison to speak because it's just the right time. Excellent. So Davison, can you hear me? Hopefully you can. Can you hear me, Davison? I'm sure Davison should be able to speak to us. So Davison, you probably want to unmute, right? So normally you should be able to unmute. So why Davison?
I can hear you.
Ah, excellent, brilliant, excellent. So we can get the conversation going. We can get a party started. So why everybody obviously is listening, I think let me just very briefly reintroduce myself because Professor was very kind to do it. So I'm Tony Tiyu, which is the founder and CEO of a company called Renewables in Africa. What we do is very simple. We're raising awareness about renewables energy and sustainability. So for people or company looking to expand into Africa, we serve as the eco bridge to this market, and we help them with visibility leads and deals. Or if you're looking to decarbonize, again, our job is to an eco bridge for you, sustainable pathway, helping you with things like carbon footprint assessment and carbon reduction strategies. Definitely something of interest. Please do reach out to me. But like I said, today is about talking about battery manufacturing industry in the continent. And I just want to give a chance to my distinguished colleagues here to introduce themselves so that they can tell you who they are. But if that's okay, so gentlemen, so let's make it short. Yeah, short is even better, right? Because we don't have enough time. So let me just start. Anybody who can join, let me just start by you, Marquise. If you maybe start by introducing yourself, and after that, I have Davison and Franklin.
And most definitely. Hello, everyone. My name is Marquise Bryant. I am the co-founder and managing partner of Fight for Light, Inc., which is actually a nonprofit that started on the campus of Morehouse College, which is focused on transforming HBCUs into hubs for sustainability and social innovation.
Excellent. Brilliant. So now I can have the next one. So yeah. Was it you, Franklin, or Tunde?
Sure, I'm happy to jump in. My name is Franklin Amo. I'm the managing partner and founder of Bayless Emerging Markets. We are a principal investment firm that focuses on the industrial and digital sector of Africa on a Pan-African basis. Great to be here.
Terrific. So Tunde?
Hey everyone, my name is Tunde Olatunji. I am the Associate Director of Policy at the Africa Center. We are a multidisciplinary institution based here in Harlem, New York. And for us, we think it's important how the world comes to understand the continent and its people and what happens there. And so we find it's important to platform people we think have important perspectives to add to conversations about the continent. And it's a pleasure to be here.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And last but not the least, Davison.
Okay, my name is Davison Chikazunga. I'm the coordinator of the Hemp Research Technology Station at the University of Johannesburg. Our focus is to develop products from hemp. One of the products which we have developed is a low carbon battery called the hemp e-brick. So I'll be discussing about it and also the potential of taking it as one of the pathways to to put Africa on the map in terms of battery manufacturing.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So thank you very much, guys. I think so far you've been very short and succinct, which I want. And I could see a whole class there, Professor Bloomer. That's great. I'm just saying hello to everybody. Maybe you want to shake your hand. I want to say, okay, I can see some of them are doing that. They're definitely listening to us. Brilliant. Excellent. So we're going to have a very interesting conversation in here. And if we're very good at managing the time, so maybe we may squeeze 1 or 2 questions from the student, right? So let's see how best we could achieve that. So I want to turn to you, Davison, so for the first question, if that's okay, right? Because I think you have University of Johannesburg in the Center of Ecological, Intelligence. And my very first question for you, if you can maybe give us a little bit of an understanding, what is for you the biggest sustainability challenges that the continent face when we're talking about battery manufacturing today? Because we know how important essentially it is, but there are challenges. What are they?
So for me, the challenges, they are in 2 categories. So there are economic challenges and environmental challenges. So what happens in Africa, we don't have a functional financial markets, which can allow for the establishment of mega battery factories. So that's an economic challenge. Ironically, 60% of the minerals used in the battery value chain are from Africa. But Africa is limited to the upstream of the market of the value chain and is not in the downstream. In terms of the ecological challenges, is that Africa, we also hold the solutions for green technologies. For example, we have 60% of the unused land in the world, and that land can be used as a green material to the battery manufacturing. Because right now, if we are to decarbonize batteries, we need to use alternative in terms of plants, which we can put in the batteries. For example, the active component of the battery, that black stuff, it can come from a process which we call biochar. So those are the 2 challenges which we need to look at. But above all, to address these challenges, we need to apply research and development. Africa has been at the receiving end in terms of knowledge development. It's high time Africa comes to the play to create knowledge, because one of our limitations in the battery value chain, we don't have the intellectual capital. The intellectual capital sits in some parts of the world. So yeah, let me leave it there. I want to be short like what you asked for. Thank you.
No, thank you very much. I think that's very, very clear. And it gives us an understanding what are the key challenges that we need really to break in order to make sure that we can unlock this industry. So I'm going to turn towards you, Marquise, right? Because I know as well that there are some concerns, so specifically safety, environmental, and also mining-related health concern that we see that impacting the role of Africa in a global supply chain. So can you talk to us a little bit about that? So if you can give us some insight there.
Yes. As Davison had mentioned, majority of the raw materials that's actually needed to create batteries comes directly from the continent. I think a lot of folks are aware of the conflicts in the Congo and other areas as well. With that said, when we think about the particular raw material in regards to cobalt, there's a parallel between the acceleration of clean energy systems, which need batteries, which at this moment is like lithium ion batteries. So there is a direct parallel between the acceleration of the of clean energy adoption and mining, right? And so so a lot of folks are pretty much highlighting that we're talking about a scramble for Africa, right? So we know the history, and so it's very important that we start to invest and really get beyond the lithium ion battery, which is the reason why Fight for Light is partnered with Davison, and we are which is a partner of Fight for Light, and the reason why we're trying to highlight these type of solutions so we can get ahead of this issue.
Okay, thank you very much for that. That's great. So give us with the lithium battery, so that we know it's very, very important. But to also, let's say, expand a little bit more in this area, we know how much investment it's important. And talking about investment from that perspective, what are for you, Franklin, because I know you are in this world, so I guess understanding it much better than any one of us in here in this panel. So what are for you the major financial and infrastructure challenges that are limiting the manufacturing growth in Africa?
Yeah, I think thanks for the question. I think there are some interrelated problems here. One is that mining, processing or concentrating the outputs of mining is very energy intensive, as is the further forward value chain of manufacturing the actual finished batteries or any of the intermediate steps, whether you're talking about the sort of lithium ion or you're talking about the sort of more kind of cobalt driven types of processes that are out there, certainly towards the more renewable type of opportunities. Now, however, I do think that those actually invite opportunities for the continent. The first speaker talked about the limitations of finance on the continent. That's true, but I think that that the large opportunity here could attract capital, and it's also Africa actually has leverage, right? Because the world needs access to lithium, cobalt, manganese, nickel, all these resources which are found in incredible concentrations in Africa. And Africa could ask, as they are starting to, I mean, the Zambians, the Namibians, the Congolese, others are starting to ask that if you want access to these raw commodities, you need to invest in processing at source, right? And that's not just, the beauty of that argument is that, obviously it's on national, development grounds and sovereignty grounds, but also it's on just common sense grounds, right? It's much more efficient to process at source than to carry, because what does processing mean? When you get the concentrates that are actually what you need to, the actual sort of, think of active ingredient, it's trapped in very large quantities of usually rock and other unused material. And if you take that to process it far away, like let's say China, you're carrying huge weights and quantities of essentially junk with you across the water. It's environmentally unsound, it's very expensive. So there's a good argument there to actually invest in Africa. One last point, just so I don't go too long, is, the other opportunity here is actually for intra-Africa trade. If you develop a continental supply chain, because while all of these materials are found in Africa, they're not all found in the same place in Africa. Some are found in DRC, some are found in South Africa, some are found in Nigeria, some are found in Guinea. So there's actually quite a diversity around the continent of where these materials are found, and where the electricity is cheapest. For instance, where there's a lot of hydro or a lot of geothermal or a lot of solar, isn't always the same places where the minerals are. So I think there's actually a lot of opportunity for natural intra-Africa trade, which is something else we want to promote. Thank you.
I think absolutely, and that's probably why the AFCFTA it's very much important. So for people that know that that's the single market that's been created in Africa, yes, it's still being shaped, but hopefully when we get through, we believe that's something that's going to be transformational. And talking about the challenges, because in the first part of this conversation that we're having right now, we're first of all just exploring the challenges, but don't worry, you're going to get into the solution as well. So I'm just going to turn to you, Tunde, because one thing is very much clear in any country. So regulation is so important, definitely, for sustainability, for renewables energy and any clean energy sector, right? So what are for you the policy and regulatory challenges that will need to be addressed for us to ensure that we could have sustainable battery production in the continent?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So I think there's probably two answers to that. I think if you went to the World Bank for example, and asked them sort of what are the challenges in this space on the continent, they'd probably speak to things like investment in infrastructure and a skilled workforce and all those things. And I think you can correct for those things with policy to an extent. But I think sort of on the policy making level, priorities for me, I also have biases because of my interest in the climate space. But I would say on the continent, I think environmental policy would be important to govern this space effectively. I think a lot of these processes, they emit a lot of carbon dioxide, and to develop a lot of these these sites. You often have to clear forests for mining pits. So it causes a lot of deforestation as well, and adds to a lot of local pollution. And I think it becomes a little counterproductive if we're developing this battery industry to help the climate crisis, but in the process, we're causing a lot of damage that kind of negates whatever positive that we're getting from it. So I would say one, environmental policy would be really important to govern that space. I'd also say trade policy would be really important. I think right now on the continent, the industry suffers from a lot of fragmented continental markets, right? And I think there's a lot of work to be done in helping streamline a lot of these value chains if we were able to develop more effective trade policy that help facilitate this. And lastly, I would say tax policy would be really important to help spur investment in this space. And this can come in the form of subsidies or whatever kind of incentives that kind of draw foreign investment and private investment as well into this space. But to summarize and to keep this as succinct as possible, I think environmental policy, trade policy, and tax policy would be my focuses.
Okay, let me just tease you a little bit. When you say tax, are you talking about tariff?
Not in this case. No, I believe it or not, I'm not a big believer in the benefits of wildly uncalculated tariffs.
That's fine. I'm not gonna obviously move into the political agenda, right? It's just me teasing you. Okay, we explore some challenges that we see in the sector, and I think if there's one thing we're all very good at is always talking about the challenges Africa has, right? Which I must say as well, every place has its challenges, but it's all about how can we actually work towards those solutions and make things happen. Because believe it or not, things are actually happening. So I'm going to turn back towards you, Davison, just to sort of kickstart. You actually kickstart the other section, the first section where we're talking about the challenges. I want to go back to you, and maybe I think your colleague, one of the colleagues, was going to share some pictures of your work. So hopefully we can get it across. So I can't promise at the moment, but we'll see. But you, Davison, I want to ask you, what can you tell us about technological advancement in the battery manufacturing sector, which can actually help African countries to move towards sustainability? Because I know you're doing a lot of research there, you have a lot of information. So what can you share to us, first of all, but also those students who are looking to you?
Okay, so there are two things which I'm going to discuss here. Remember, I said we want to decarbonize the battery manufacturing process. So the way we are going to decarbonize the battery manufacturing process is that we need to look at the materials which we are looking at. So at the University of Johannesburg, we have created a post-lithium battery. Remember, one of the challenges why the value chain for hemp is not green is because of the lithium. And secondly is the graphite. So we have created a battery which doesn't need lithium, which doesn't need graphite. We are bringing other cheaper materials like your manganese, your aluminium, to replace the chemistry in the battery. But what is interesting with the project which I'm doing at the University of Johannesburg, we are bringing a byproduct from hemp production. Okay, hemp is also called industrial cannabis. I want you to differentiate. Cannabis has three categories. There's a medical cannabis, which is a certain level of THC, 0.2 to 0.3, although in Africa we're increasing it to 5%. And there's what we call a recreational cannabis, which is high THC. But there's another component which people are not putting on the table, which is called industrial cannabis. So industrial cannabis is grown largely for its fiber and it's for its seeds. So from industrial hemp, we generate components which we can put in the battery. For example, the active carbon fiber, carbon material, we can burn hemp through a pyrolysis process, and we create what's called biochar, and we replace that active carbon component. But the most interesting part is that the anode in our battery is made from carbon, which is also hemp. But in the same battery, in terms of the separator, we are replacing graphite in the current lithium ion battery with graphene. So no, with hemp graphene. So hemp, you can make what I call hemp carbon nanosheets. So this hemp carbon nanosheets, they're the same structure like graphene. So graphene comes from graphite. Hemp graphene comes from hemp. One of the good things about this is that you reduce the cost of the graphite component by 10 times, by a factor of 10. So if you reduce the carbon content in the battery by a factor of 10, it means that you are reducing the cost of battery, because one of the limitations in terms of battery manufacturing is the cost of raw materials. So you are replacing lithium, you are replacing graphite. So those are the two things which is going to make Africa to be competitive in terms of battery manufacturing. So we are moving from the elements which are making hemp to be batteries to be expensive, using alternative approaches. And we are at a level where we are now making a solid state battery, which is called a hemp e-brick. So I'll give you the bigger picture. So the hemp e-brick is what we call a structural battery. It has two components. The first component is a brick, a normal brick. Then inside it, we have battery in the cavities. So instead of having a battery as a separate component, the structure, the wall, becomes the battery. So this is good for bulk energy storage solutions. So we have tested this technology. I will share with you the numbers. It has better energy density compared to current lithium battery. The current lithium battery, if you want to use on an EV charger, you can take about 15 to 30 minutes. Our battery has been tested. We can take 4 minutes to charge a car from 0 to full. These are the wild numbers which I'll share with you, but there's a paper. So we are developing this product. It's in a prototype phase where we are saying we want to create a new battery system, not the conventional which we have copied from China. We want to create an alternative battery system which uses local material. The hemp which I'm talking about, it's a waste, it's a byproduct of cannabis and hemp production, is the stock, which is usually thrown into the fire after harvest. So those are the changes which we are doing, and also coming up with new materials. It's a game changer from moving from lithium, which is controlled by what I call the price is driven by speculation. So we're moving to cheaper materials. So with that battery, the hemp e-brick, we not only are we going to just make the bulk energy storage, we are also going to go into making change the EVs industry. Instead of having the battery at the base of the car, the body part of the car becomes the battery, because we are now mixing the biocomposites from hemp, the plastic part, with the part which has electrodynamic functions from the hemp graphene, so that instead of having a battery pack at the base of the car, the body part, which is plastic, will be a battery itself. So it's going to change the whole scenario in terms of battery. I'll end up here, but this right now we are doing the one way we are replacing the walls of a house with a battery. But the future, we are going to move into EVs. We're also going to move into aircrafts. So that's how we want to change the game. According to the test of our battery, which I'll share with you, our battery system is better than CATL, which is powering Tesla cars. The tests are there. I'm not a scientist, I'm an economist. But it's better for an economist to explain this so that the whole industry can follow with the science. I have a whole group of people who I'm working with university, from the Department of Mechanical Engineering, Electrical Engineering, Metallurgy. So I've the whole tuty of science behind this idea. But what I want to say, the next generation of batteries, Africa can take a lead, and it's going. Yeah. Okay. Let me leave it here. I wanted to, once again. So we are now working with Marquise and John to create what we call a virtual power station. So this virtual power station,
yeah, I think
is
if you don't mind, Davison, I think what you say is actually very interesting. What I'm actually picking up is there is an African team who's taking on another African man, Mr. Elon Musk, right, in developing the new level of battery. Definitely, we want to hear about that, and definitely Marquise and John will be sharing more information, and hopefully we can get to see the picture, because the way you were describing that, yes, I'm a little bit of an engineer, so I understand what you're talking about. It sounds very, very interesting, and definitely we'll come back to you on that. Yeah, and for people who are interested, make sure that you can also reach out already to Davison. So Marquise, I want to come back to you because it looked like you're working very closely with Davison and creating these, let's say, so this new level, new revolution of batteries. But I wanted to find out as well from you much more broadly, are there also example of clean energy power battery production in the continent or globally that you believe can be used as a model for the continent? Because we're also talking about why doing it, decarbonizing.
I would say my answer to that question it would be the work that Davison is speaking to. I think the main idea that I want to convey on this panel is the solutions for Africa is going to come from Africa, right? So folks like Davison, there's also a group here in the U.S. Called Johnson Battery Energy Storage. They're also working on a next generation battery. I think the role for folks like us is to help get this research that they're doing and help them pretty much secure the type of investment that they need to bring these solutions to the world. Because generally speaking, the way I look at it is that when we get past nationalism and nations and governments and all these different things, what we're really talking about is the human race being able to address climate change. And we're not going to be able to address climate change unless we unlock Africa's full potential. And the only way that we're going to be able to do that is, for one, is understanding that most solutions that other nations put forth prioritize their own national security over the sustainability and the security of Africa, which is why it's very important that Africa comes up with its own solutions. And Davison and his team is an example of that. And folks that are truly sincere about addressing climate change follow suit and support them, right? Because at the end of the day, our success depends on their success. And so I guess the way I look at it is moving from a colonial mindset to a cooperative mindset. And that paradigm shift is what is needed to essentially accelerate these innovations. So when we say looking for a model, I would say that the University of Johannesburg and the work that Davison is speaking to is the model. We need to just ensure that they can get the resources that they need to bring it to the world.
Excellent. So talking about the resources they need to bring it to the world. So one thing we know is they need capital, they need money, right? And when we talk about money, there is a guy representing money here, that's Mr. Franklin, right? So Franklin, I'm hoping that you managed to join the session with a few millions that are waiting on the bank, for us, right?
Well, your lips to God's ears, but I would say a couple of things in response to some of the statements that have just been made.
Please jump in.
I hope you can hear me. But yeah, I share the passion for addressing the climate challenge. However, I think there is also an immediate opportunity in front of Africa in traditional battery manufacturing. As was said earlier, the bulk of the inputs are on the continent, available to the continent, and therefore, the availability at low cost, and in order to create a business case and an investment case for that is pretty sound. And there are a couple of good things about that. Number one is that by definition, that will have a climate impact because, again, you're not wasting millions of sea miles, nautical miles, taking unnecessary product all over the place. But more importantly than that, what it will do is it will create a basis for further industrialization and manufacturing capability on the continent. The manufacturing of batteries is considered a sort of foundational engineering process, and lots of other types of manufacturing aren't really possible unless you have battery manufacturing capabilities. Blast furnaces for steel are another one of these sort of foundational kind of manufacturing processes without which all sorts of other industries can't happen. So I think that Africa focusing on establishing itself as a manufacturer of batteries, which by the way isn't exactly considered sexy, right? So it's not necessarily you're competing. You're not competing with Europe and America. You're really competing with East Asia, quite frankly, and a little bit of India. So it's a realistic space to carve out, particularly if you're focused on the continent's own domestic demand, which is significant. And you can start with low-hanging fruit like recycling batteries. Again, something which will have a climate impact, right? So recycling lithium batteries is something that can help with some of the work that Davidson is doing by sort of reducing the sort of total amount of lithium that's been processed that's out there. So I think this is all very important. And I think that, again, to drive ancillary businesses, which is what I consider electronic vehicles to be, for instance, right? Africa needs to, and this is something I say ad nauseum wherever I speak, wherever I write, the focus for Africa and its diaspora over the next 50 years, in my judgment, is to migrate from being primarily consumers to being producers, right? So in all aspects, Africa and its diaspora are today almost entirely consumers of everything, of all sorts of value. So we are at the receiving end of every value chain, and for many value chains at the very beginning. So we sort of, ship out the stuff raw, let other people do interesting things to it, and buy it back as a finished product. This is not going to be productive for the world because Africa has the most people in the world, or will have the most people in the world at the end of the century. And when you have a significant population, you really need to be thinking about what that population is doing all day in terms of labor. And so it must focus on creating productive production value chains, which is the only way you're going to absorb, that large quantity of people. And that will have a follow-on effect on reducing some of the other problems, and which creates then a business case for capitalists like myself to invest in. So I think that's kind of where I see the opportunity. We are very focused on developing some of those value chains and investing in them. But I think that's the challenge. And I think as you get to the innovations that people like Davidson and Marquise are working on, in the interim, I think you still have a lot to do with sort of, proved technologies that are simple and easy to deal with and investable now. And I think we should be spending a lot of time on that.
I think you're absolutely right. And talking about the population of Africa, so the current population is about 1.4 billion, and you were talking about being the biggest continent in terms of population by the end of the century. By 2050, that population is going to jump to 2.5 billion. And if you compare that in the same time frame, or the other continent or the other place in the world, so nobody come close. So that means between now and 2050, we're going to add something like 800 million people. So that's significant. 900 million people. That's significant. No other continent will do that. So when we're talking about the growth of Africa, it's definitely going to happen because there is a huge market. So some of the people sitting there, students, so looking for opportunity, like I say, you really want to explore this market because we're really at the beginning of things. Personally, that's the way I see things. And also, I've been in this market for more than 10 years. Definitely, I've seen progress in the short space of time that I've had my career there. So I come back to you, Tunde. So from the regulatory standpoint, so how can we create an enabling environment, right, for innovation for batteries so that we can have, not just Davison next time in this panel, but we have like 10 Davison in the panel. So more of those people. What kind of environment should we create, would you say, from the regulatory perspective?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. And I think I struggle with this sometime. It feels like a chicken or the egg kind of question, whether or not sort of you create the environment to bring as much of it home as possible. You bring as much of it home as possible, and that sort of creates the environment that leads to the kind of innovation that you want, right? And I think my my take on it would be more to Franklin's point. I think you create the environment by creating the environment, and I think that just requires trying to keep as much of it at home as possible, right? So we work to develop these value chains locally, and and in the long run, as the continent even tries to pursue its own kind of energy transitions, I think these value chains will serve us well in those pursuits as well. And I think in the meantime, while those things will take a while to develop, I think we can work to just kind of support the market now and kind of put them in as good a position to be as successful in the future, right? So let's support the development of African suppliers to these mining companies. Let's formalize and prioritize knowledge transfers, right? To make sure that a lot of this information and this knowledge is staying here. And I think big picture, I think it really is just a question of being deliberate and intentional in trying to make sure that we're not just relegated to the unproductive ends of the value chain, and we are trying and developing these skills and these infrastructure ourselves. And I know this is kind of a backwards answer to how do you create the enabling environment, but I really do think that you create the enabling environment by creating the environment. And I think that sort of it's less about policy and the regulation and more just emphasizing that we want to be as involved in every aspect of this and not just the parts that leave you with pollution and fragmented societies.
Yeah, I think I absolutely agree with you. So it's about wherever you find yourself, just make a start. Just make a start and be creative. So if you're really committed to the end goal, I'm sure you're going to figure out a solution. That's the way, for example, for me, I've always seen things as an entrepreneur. I'm sure other people here having the same kind of journey will say the same. So we talked about the challenges. We've explored some of the solutions, but one thing that clearly resonates, and I think Franklin said it best, we don't want Africa to be always at the receiving end, not be just a market. Because most of the time people talk about Africa, they talk about market. No, we want the continent to have a seat at the table. So being a producer, right? So that is actually what we're talking about here. So for the last 10 minutes that we have in here, so what I'd like us to focus more is to talk about, so how can we really talk about the role of Africa in the global battery market, right? So I was just going to go to the round of questions that I have, which I still will do if time permit. But let me just flip the scenario a little bit. So I'm just going to go back to Professor Bloomer, just in case there's one or two burning questions from the room, because I like to get a student involved, because it's almost like I'm preaching to you guys. I say, hey, I want to see the next, I would say, line of innovators, entrepreneurs also coming from you guys, because you're listening to us. We are obviously doing what we can, but I'm sure as well, we're counting a lot on you. So is there any burning question that Professor Bloomer, I don't know if one of your students will have. If yes, so we're just going to take and allow the panel to jump on it. If not, we carry on the question. So I'm just asking, just give you a chance. Okay. See, the professor is asking. Don't be shy, by the way. Yeah, so it looks like there is.
There we go. I have one burning question, and maybe this will induce students to have a question as well.
Okay.
There's a lot of information, and recently I've been reading in the New York Times about Africa and other developing countries becoming dumping grounds for the technology waste of the developed world. And I think it was the comment that Franklin made about lithium battery recycling, and I just wonder what the panel's thoughts are about the risks of making Africa or continuing for Africa to be this dumping ground, because the dumping ground phenomenon already exists, and it's a terrible risk for the developing world. And it's certainly a significant risk for Africa.
Yeah,
I have a comment on that.
Please.
Yes, so I think that there's definitely opportunity in the recycling of let's say lead acid batteries, lithium ion batteries, pretty much material that's have already been mined. In regards to old technologies that's being dumped into Africa, I do think that it is Africa should not be locked into let's just say archaic technologies, right? Africa really has the opportunity to leapfrog. So I think that even the way that we even talk about Africa, so like the concept of how does Africa get a seat at the table? The reality of the situation is that Africa is the table, and the question is for true sustainable economic development, a true inclusive sustainable economic development is how do other nations come to the table, being Africa, and actually be better partners, right? And better collaborators, which also has to do with the technologies. Giving Africa old technologies, it could come off as like a charitable or as a good thing, but the truth is that Africa deserves future infrastructure, not the old infrastructure of of these developed nations. So I think that so essentially what I'm trying to say is that I think it's very important that the innovation around recycling and repurposing and reusing old infrastructure is important. But I also think it's also important to be supporting leapfrog opportunities for Africa to lead the world into a more prosperous future.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Starting with Africa.
No, thanks for your contribution, Marquise. I know Franklin's raised his hand, so I guess he's want to say something very quickly. I just want to say, Franklin, before you jump in, we only have about a couple of minutes left. So after you, we're just going to start wrapping up, right? So obviously, we would love to spend a lot more time, but I know that we're restricted by the time for the class. But Franklin, please.
Yeah, 30 seconds. I think, agree with everything Marquise said and the previous speakers. All I'll add is that, in order to get there where, Africa may be the table, but today Africa is not sitting at its own table. And I think the reason for that is because people, particularly that classroom of young students, need to view Africa as the opportunity set, and Africa itself needs to create innovation and start to bring new technology and view Africa itself as the opportunity set. Today, what happens generally is most people look outside. Most young Africans with potential look outside of Africa and look to contribute outside of Africa. But if you look at Africa and its problems uniquely in Africa, in an African context, and try to innovate for those, then you will have the new technologies, then you will have the new innovations come out for Africa. Because I agree completely, but I don't think that those new innovations are going to work if they come from other parts of the world, because naturally you'll get back to what you're talking about, which is sort of right-sizing things and using older technologies, because that's what will make sense in Africa from an existing technology. We need technologies that come from Africa that are focused on fixing African problems.
Absolutely, that's great. Is there anybody that want to react to that in a minute?
I want to come in. So I will say two words. We need to decolonize finance, and we need to decolonize education. The current global capital system doesn't work for Africa. In fact, there's an alternative which can work for Africa, but we need the diaspora to help us. Just imagine all these minerals, they have a value, lithium, gold. Just imagine if we can create a token or a cryptocurrency backed by the minerals in Africa. What are we going to have? A lot of capital. But we need to monetize it. So for us to monetize it, we need the market, which is the people in the diaspora. Number two, what I found recently in terms of decolonized education, there are better innovations, better science in Africa compared to Europe, China, America. What is not happening is that these innovations, they are not getting the right support in terms of publicity, in terms of resources. So decolonize education, decolonize finance. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Davison, for being short and swift. So I like it. So as you see, so we barely just scratching the surface of this topic, right? We can, I'm sure, go on for another couple of hours, if not days, right? But we need to bring it to a close. But what obviously John Moore oversees, an alumnus, and also Professor Bloomer suggested for the student listening to us. So please feel free to share your question to Professor Bloomer, because after that we have another, let's say, post session after this webinar where we're going to be talking to the speakers. And what we could do, we will actually make sure that we respond to the additional question that you may have, right? So that's what we're going to do. But now, obviously, I'm just going to come to a close for this conversation. And I want to thank you all, so the student, but also all the people that join us today. I know, for example, I want to acknowledge one of the speakers for the panel tomorrow. That's Sylvie Bello, who I think who is there, to maybe some other people. So thank you all of you for insightful discussions. I think all the panelists, you really have illuminated, the multifaceted challenges and also the promising solution, like, for example, what Davidson is working on the African battery manufacturing industry. And you clearly have emphasized the role of technology, policy, finance, but also strategic partnership, right? That's very, very important. So my special thanks, to our heroes of today, the panelists. So obviously Davison Chikazunga, Marquise Bryan, Franklin Mu, Tunde Olatunji, and then also Professor Bloomer and the students, for sharing your expertise and also for listening. Yeah, so we clearly appreciate your engagement. And we are looking forward to continuing this vital conversation to drive sustainable growth across the continent. But don't forget, that's only day 3 of the Awareness Week. We still have some more time that we're going to spend together. And we also have some more conversation tomorrow and also Friday. So for the time being, let me just wish you all beautiful rest of your day. And then we see you very shortly. Yeah. So thank you very much, everybody. And I think we're probably going to finish with a little bit of music.
Thank you very much. And Tony, I will join you in just a moment, okay?
Excellent.
All right,
For the other
everyone.
speaker,
God bless.
Okay, thank you very much. All the speakers, we're going to drop that and we connect to the next link. Yeah. Thank you very much, everybody. Good.
Are we leaving this link and joining another link?
Yes. I shared that again in the group so that you could see.